Welcome to the Boulder Criminal Lawyer Podcast with Janine McCabe. I'm your host, Elena Nicole. In this podcast, we'll break down the criminal justice process and answer the questions many people have, but often don't know where to ask. From what criminal defense attorneys actually do, to what happens during an investigation or arrest, or how cases are built and defended in court. Janine McCabe is a criminal defense attorney and skilled courtroom litigator who has taken nearly 100 cases to trial, representing clients in municipal, county, and district courts. Janine, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So let's dive right in. You're a criminal defense lawyer. For any listeners who aren't overly familiar with that practice area, what is criminal defense?
Criminal defense really helps people who are charged with a crime, whether it's municipal court, state court, or federal court. And it's usually people who have either received a ticket or been arrested and then told that there are charges against them that the government wants to prosecute them for.
Okay. And what does a criminal defense lawyer actually do during a case?
A criminal defense lawyer's job, their first priority is to get to know the client and find out the client's version of events, what actually happened, and what defenses they might have available to them, and then to represent them fully throughout the entire process.
And what constitutional rights are defense attorneys protecting?
There are a number of constitutional rights for each and every person charged with a crime. It starts with when you are contacted by the police. It starts with your Fourth Amendment rights. Was there an illegal search? Were they asking you questions without advising you of your rights? Were they selecting or collecting your property without a warrant? Were they searching through it? So those are the first kinds of questions that defense lawyers want to know. And then as the process continues, to make sure that all of your rights are protected, ensuring that you get a right to a fair trial, a right to a fair prosecution, that all of your rights are represented from the very beginning of the case all the way through to the end.
Amazing. And what's the difference between a lawyer and a criminal defense attorney?
Well, it's kind of like your general practitioner doctor who handles all issues versus a criminal defense lawyer is a specialist. And they specialize only in representing clients who are charged with crimes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And when should someone look for a lawyer who focuses specifically on criminal defense?
A lot of times we have clients who call us who say, the police called me and they're investigating me, and I'm not exactly sure what that's about. And that's the first time where you should think about, I need a lawyer, because you should never talk to police without a lawyer. Other times you've already been arrested. And once you've been arrested, the wheels of justice are already in motion. And it's really important to reach out to a criminal defense lawyer at that time.
And I want to loop back on something you said before. Why is it important not to talk to the police without a lawyer present?
Yeah, police have a lot of rules that they have to abide by. But one of those rules is that they can lie to you about the evidence in the case. They can say that a co-defendant has already confessed. They can say they found your fingerprints at the scene. It's considered an investigatory technique to see if you will incriminate yourself. And so that's why you want to be really careful and you want to talk to a lawyer about why it's even a good idea to talk to the police at all.
And what experience actually matters most when choosing a defense attorney?
You really want to pay attention to what their background is. Have they specialized in criminal defense, or do they do a number of areas like a general practitioner as opposed to a specialist? And then you want to think about how long have they been doing it and what is their trial experience? Are they a lawyer who has not spent a lot of time in courtrooms? Have they just negotiated cases away? Or have they fought the big fights and the big battles on behalf of their clients?
And what is the primary role of a criminal defense attorney, and how does that role change from investigation to trial?
I would say the defense attorney's primary role is to represent you, the individual. Find out what your case is all about and what's going to be the best resolution or the best outcome from your case. And that role stays the same from the very beginning, finding out from this client what you're charged with, what your possible defenses are, all the way through trial, through the investigation, through any mitigation. What is your goal on this case and what's going to make the most sense to get a good resolution?
And how should a client measure whether their lawyer is actually doing a good job?
The first thing is your lawyer communicating with you about what's going on? Does the lawyer tell you from the beginning what the current steps are, what the next steps are, and what is the strategy for getting the goal that you want in your case? If you're a client who is heading to trial, your lawyer should be telling you all along the way about the investigation that has been done, what additional investigation might be needed, and what the prognosis looks like if you were to go to trial.
And what if they aren't doing that?
The first thing you want to do is find out, are you just having a difficulty communicating with this particular lawyer? And if it's not going well, you really need to be comfortable with who is representing you. The stakes are high, right? Your freedom could be taken away. You may have a permanent mark on your record if you are convicted of a felony. Before anything like that happens, you want to make sure you have a really good relationship with your attorney. You feel comfortable with the advice and information that you're receiving. And if you're not getting the information that you need, that's when you may want to consider hiring a different lawyer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, why would someone hire a criminal defense attorney?
Anytime that you are being investigated or charged with a crime. So sometimes you're just concerned. Maybe a friend told you, hey, the police came by your house the other day, and you don't know why. So maybe you want to contact a criminal defense lawyer, find out if there's any active warrants for your arrest. If you can find that out, sometimes we can learn that and sometimes not. Sometimes investigations are being conducted in secret. And so you want to get a lawyer available right away. Sometimes a detective has called you and said they want to interview you. And your lawyer can get involved and reach out to the detective and find out, well, what is the investigation concerning? What are the potential charges? And sometimes it can be going and making a statement to the police to avoid charges being filed at all, or cooperating with the police so that they don't issue a warrant and that you can receive a ticket or a summons instead.
What happens during the first meeting with a criminal defense attorney?
The first meeting, it's going to depend on whether you have been charged or whether you're concerned about being charged. If it's a situation where you think you're going to be charged with a crime, and let's say that crime is sex assault, you want your attorney to know about the facts of the case sooner rather than later. And then if there is already charges filed, you want your attorney to read through the charging document and potentially the discovery at that first meeting so that you can get a handle on exactly what you're facing and what needs to be done to represent you.
And what are the most common mistakes that you see people make before hiring a defense lawyer?
Well, I would say the biggest, most common mistake is talking to the police. Too many times people think if they can just explain what happened to the police, then they won't be charged with a crime and that the police will take their side or will listen to their story, not knowing or not recognizing that instead what they're really doing is providing ammunition for the police to say that anything that you've said may have corroborated something that the witness may have said against you.
Why can waiting too long to hire a lawyer harm a case?
Well, sometimes you want to get in right away and get some investigation going so that it doesn't go cold. Right? There may be sometimes witnesses who will talk to you before charges are filed, but once charges have been filed, the wheels start turning and people may not be as cooperative. So you really want to get in and start investigating and talking to witnesses as soon as possible.
And how can talking to friends or family or social media, how can that affect a case?
In this day and age, there is so much access to technology, and so much of that technology is permanently recorded. And so if you comment to your family about something about your case or text someone, that information, as soon as you put it out there, it's out in the world and you don't have the opportunity to pull it back. You don't have the opportunity to change it. And that's why it's really important not to talk with family or friends, and especially in a platform that is recorded and can be sent to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And what should someone do immediately if they suspect they are being investigated?
Well, the first thing they should do is stop talking, right? Don't talk to friends, don't talk to family, and then talk to a lawyer. Find a good lawyer who can handle the type of case, the type of charges that you've been charged with.
And how do you know if you're being investigated? Would you be notified? How does that work?
That's a great question. Not always. Sometimes you just get a phone call in the middle of the day or at night, and it's a detective who's calling you out of the blue, and you're not exactly sure what they're calling about. Other times you get a knock on the door. Many times there could be investigation that's happening without your knowledge at all. That's why as soon as you have an inkling, you should reach out to a criminal defense lawyer.
And what are common signs that law enforcement may be building a case?
Well, a lot of times you're going to see maybe they're not talking to you, but maybe they're knocking on your neighbor's door. Maybe they're talking to your ex-wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or maybe they have talked to somebody at work. Those are the kinds of signs that maybe they haven't spoken to you, but the people around you, and you should be concerned about that.
Yeah. And if investigators reach out and they contact you, what should you do?
Well, the first thing you should do is say that, thank you so much for calling. I'm happy to work with you, but I do have a lawyer and I would like to talk to my lawyer and have them call you back. And you always be polite, you always be friendly, but you be very assertive that you are not speaking to them without your lawyer present.
And if someone doesn't have a lawyer at that point, they still give the same response?
That's exactly right. You can still say, I'm going to speak to a lawyer. I choose to exercise my right to remain silent. I'm going to
Mhm.
speak to a lawyer and I will get back to you with my lawyer.
And why can informal conversations with the police be risky?
There is no such thing as a formal or informal conversation with the police. Each and every contact that you have with the police is considered information that they could use against you later.
And what is the safest way to respond if police ask for an interview?
The safest way is to start by asserting your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Again, be polite, say, thank you so much for your interest. At this time, I'm not going to be speaking to you. I'm going to exercise my right to remain silent. I'm also going to exercise my right to an attorney. I'm going to call my attorney and I'll get your contact information so that they can call you back.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Janine. This has been such a great conversation about criminal defense, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks so much.
Okay.